National Women's History Month. It is important that we highlight the extraordinary achievements of women throughout history and recognize the obstacles that they have had to overcome to reach their goals. Welcome to Take 10 on Tuesdays with the Tennessee Tribune. I am Deniece Barnes, and with me today is anchorwoman and reporter from Channel 5 WTVF, Vicki Yates. Vicki, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you here, Vicki. As I mentioned earlier, March is Women's History Month.
Yes.
And such a wonderful month and a wonderful thing it is to recognize all of the, women in history.
Exactly.
So what I want to talk to you about is, of course, your story. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, Vicki.
Okay, I was born and raised in Detroit. Went to Michigan State University got a degree in telecommunications. Took a lot of little jobs that were connected to communications, including working at a newspaper, the black newspaper, the Michigan Chronicle at the time. I believe it's still a Chronicle. Worked for other little television stations along the way, and then kind of worked my way up into. I didn't really want to be on air. That was not my desire to be on air. But at the time, I was a newlywed, and the job I was doing behind the scenes, I wasn't getting paid much. But I noticed that the anchor people were really getting paid well. So I thought, well, maybe that's where I need to go because I'm kind of broke, being a newlywed. So actually, that's kind of what spurred me into that. Actual being an anchor person. It wasn't journalism because journalism was what I wanted to do. I love writing. I've always loved to write, so that was always the force that kicked in. But the actual anchoring was kind of more of a, maybe that's what I need to do.
Okay.
So that's kind of how everything got started.
Okay, now you started out talking about your early days, your early years in reporting. Talk to us a little bit, Vicki, about some of the stories that you had to cover in Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, in Detroit, now this is Detroit before it really took the downward turn that unfortunately it's taking now.
Oh, yes.
It's my home and I still love it, but it's gone through a lot of problems. A lot of problems that we weren't really facing at the time.
Okay.
But at the time, I remember for the Michigan Chronicle, being that I was in college, they would kind of ask me for stories that were related to my age range. So I would go up around Michigan State and talk to different people and ask, what's going on with the different sororities and fraternities. And I didn't belong to a sorority because at that time, if you belonged to one sorority, you couldn't talk to people in another fraternity because it wasn't your brother fraternity. It was just really crazy. Yeah, it was very divisive, and I just thought, I don't want that. I want to be able to talk to whoever I want to.
Yeah.
So I would go to the different sororities and fraternities and talk to them about what was going on in their lives, what was going on in their communities. And that it really worked out because that was something that the Michigan Chronicle hadn't really had before. So I was sort of like a college reporter. And I think my big story was I did an interview with, and you probably don't even know the name of the group or recognize them. They were called the Silvers. They were based off of the Jackson 5. It was brothers and sisters.
Okay.
They were based out of California, and I was going to California to see relatives. And while I was there, I said, "Well, I'm going to do an interview, see if I can set it up." I set it up with the Silvers, and it got not front page, but the second front page. And so that was my big get.
Well, good for you. Good for you. What great memories, because when we reflect back on our early years of broadcasting and media, I mean, we bring a lot of memories, as I said, to the future, to where we are now, to the present.
Exactly.
Now, you are an Emmy Award winner, Vicki, and congratulations on that. I want you to talk just a few moments about some of the Emmys that you've won and reflect back on that with us.
Well, the very first one I won, because that's the one that you remember, the first time you won an Emmy.
Yes.
We had done a segment, or not really a segment, we had done a series called Bundles of Joy, and it was based on people or families who had more than one child at a time, like twins, triplets. It was kind of a nice feature piece. And my producer and I had worked really hard on it, and we thought, well, we're going to submit it to the Emmys because everybody said, oh, it's cute and blah, blah, blah. And lo and behold, it won, and I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Good for you.
The way it felt so great because at that time I had my mother and father there to attend the Emmys, and so they got to see me win an Emmy.
Yes.
And ironically, years later, I gave birth to twins, so I don't know if it had anything to do with that.
Well, good for you. Twins. How was life with the twins? I know it was busy.
Gosh, busy. I have an older daughter. Right now she's 26. Obviously, at the time she was 2 when they were born, and so she's 2 years older than my sons, who are now 24.
Oh,
so at one time I had 3 children, all kind of in between diapers and that kind of movement. So it was crazy. It was crazy.
Talk to us now, Vicki, about Wilma Rudolph.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I won an Emmy for that because, and I give her full credit for this, when I first moved to Nashville, one of the first people I met was Wilma Rudolph.
Really?
And for me, that was just, I mean, she's an icon. She was an
Yes,
icon
she
then,
is,
and she's
yes.
certainly an icon now. And so I was just overwhelmed, but she was so generous and so gracious, and just, she said, anything you need, you let me know, and I'll guide you in the right direction. She just went like out of her way for somebody she didn't really know.
Wow.
And I was just always touched by that. So eventually we got to kind of be close, not close in that we would hang out or anything, but that whenever she came into the station, I would go and talk to her and we'd talk and laugh. And anyway, I asked her, I said, you know, I'd love to do an interview with you about your life because, you know, you look back and she's had such a wonderful,
Yes, she has.
well, wonderful, and then other times not quite so wonderful because she had problems as well. Everybody does.
Oh, yes.
And so I got to do the interview with her, and it turned out to be the last interview she ever did before she was, at the time we interviewed her, she had been diagnosed with a brain tumor, but she hadn't told anybody.
Really?
And so within months of doing the interview, she had passed away.
Wow.
But I can't think of anybody that I would think more highly of.
Such a phenomenal
Oh,
lady.
she went to
Yes.
go through. She went through polio. I believe she didn't have a really good marriage. She just had some problems, you know. So.
Well, it's good you did get that interview
I was so
with her.
glad.
That's
Sure.
so good. Now I want to talk to you, Vicki, about the White House.
Oh,
now
my
you
gosh.
were invited
Oh.
to go and interview President Barack Obama
Yes.
one-on-one. Talk to us
Yeah.
about that. What was that like? What was he like?
Oh my gosh. They told us 2 days beforehand. They called and said, well, my news director, Sandy Boonstra, said, I had just finished doing the forum, gone back to my desk, and she said, do you have anything planned Thursday? And I'm like, no, not really. I said, why? She said, you want to go to Washington? I'm like, Washington? She said, and interview the president? And I'm like,
Oh my
and I'm
goodness.
kind of screaming silently into the phone because I
Of
wasn't
course.
around to hear what I was saying.
Yes.
So I ran into her office and she said, they gave us the opportunity and they asked for you to come, and if you want to go, we're going. I said, of course.
Oh, yeah,
Don't
she
even
has
ask
turned
that.
that
Right. So we went, 2 days later, we were there at the White House, and of course I was nervous. I mean, it's the president
Of
of the United
course,
States.
yes.
My first time going to the White House, too. I'd been in front of the White House doing stories, but I'd never actually gone in.
Been inside.
So anyway, make a long story short, there were 4 of us. I was the only female from the different stations across the country who had gone in, and they let me go first.
All
So I was
right.
sitting there in the, I believe it was called the, I think it's the dignitaries room or something. Anyway, it's where he comes when he gets off the helicopter and he walks through. That's where he walks through. And
Oh, I
that's the room
see.
they use. So I'm sitting there waiting, and my back is to the door, and they said, well, he'll be here in like 2 minutes. I said, okay, great. So I'm sitting there
Are
waiting.
you sweating?
And I am. I'm like, I'm praying. I'm like, please, God, please
Yes.
don't let me mess this up.
Oh, you were fine, I'm sure.
I'm asking my, you know, the angels and spirits, come on, help me out here. So,
Yeah.
And I thought when the president walks in, they would like announce him, like the president has
He's
arrived,
here.
or a horn or something.
Exactly.
And the next thing I know, he had bent over me and said, hi, Vicki, I'm Barack, how are you? And I'm just like,
Oh,
inside, like a
melt.
little kid. I'm like screaming and jumping up and down. But I was
Oh, my
really cool, and I'm like, hello,
Yes.
Mr. President, how are you?
Oh my goodness.
So he sits down and we have a nice conversation. He's very sincere. I never felt like his answers were things that he had practiced, because I mean, he doesn't have time to do that. And before we left, they didn't say there's nothing you can't ask. They
Oh, really? Everything
They
was
said
just-
whatever you want to ask, feel free to ask. So
Okay.
I felt like that was good because he wouldn't be okay. I'm only
Rehearsed.
rehearsed. So I asked him all the questions, and we finished. They gave us 8 minutes. We finished, and before we had started, he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Originally Detroit." He said, "Yeah, family there." And I said, "Yeah, my sister's there, and her kids are there." So after the interview was over, I was taking my mic off, and he said, "Vicki, do me a favor." I said, "Sure." He said, "Tell your sister I said hi." I said, "Okay." So as soon as I get out of the door, I'm calmly walking out. And as soon as I can, I'm calling my sister. Right?
Well, of course.
The president just gave you a shout out.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's good for you, Vicki. Now,
It was.
how did you prepare the questions, to ask him?
I talked to I was talking to my news director because she went with me, and I said, okay, what's important to our part of the state? You know, because you can ask him things about world peace and about what's going on in the Middle East, but that does pertain to us. But I wanted something a little more specific
For
because,
Tennessee.
yeah, for Tennessee, and
Exactly.
especially for Nashvillians. So we started to think and kind of brainstorm about what kinds of things would our viewers want to see or hear about, and so that's kind of how we did that.
Oh, good deal.
Yeah.
Well, good for you then.
Thank you.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, March is National Women's History Month.
Yes.
I want you, Vicki, to talk to us about this. What positive impact would you say that you made in the community? I know you do some volunteering.
I do.
But talk to us about that, and what does Women's History Month mean to you?
You know, I think the most important I would hope the most important thing I've done is reach out to people who are sitting at home watching me on television and saying, that's somebody that I respect and somebody that I would like to know. If you're a young African American woman, I'd like for somebody to say, I'd kind of like to be like that. Not because of what I do or because of anything other than somebody to be respected. I want women to respect themselves. I don't feel like, you know, we see so many TV shows where women are degrading themselves and each other.
Fighting, bullying one another.
I mean, literally fighting
they
each other.
are, and getting paid to do it.
Getting paid
Yes.
and becoming famous.
That's
doing
awful.
It. You know, and so for me, it's about the respect. It's about seeing a woman or another person that you can respect and point to and say, you know, that's somebody who represents my community. So that's what it means to me. Because when I was growing up, there was a lady named Beverly Payne who did basically what I do. She was an anchor woman at the time, first black anchor woman in Detroit. And I used to love to see her because she was so poised and she was very intelligent, and you knew that when you watched her. And so she made me want to be a better person, to be the woman that she was. And if I can do that for anybody, then
You've left your positive impact.
You know, and especially for young ladies who are coming up.
Absolutely, and they definitely need it, especially our young females, as you said. You've been a great mentor, and you've really given me some insight, Vicki, because I watch you on Channel 5. Again, we're speaking with Vicki Yates, anchor woman and reporter with WTVF, Channel 5 News. And so again, is there anything that you would like to leave with our viewers, Vicki, regarding Women's History Month?
Just to, you know, women have gone through so much. I mean, just since the beginning of time, it's always the woman, I think, who is the backbone, who is the first train car going through life, and just to respect her and to give her some assistance every now and then. You know, you hear a lot of stories about, oh, he did me wrong, or whatever, you know, personal stories are going on. Be the woman that you are meant to be, and don't worry about all this extraneous stuff. Be the woman you are. Be dignified. Keep yourself as far as you can away from any kind of controversy. I know it's hard sometimes.
Yes, it is.
But, you know, do the best you can and be a good example for some other woman.
Absolutely. Be thankful for what you have. You will end up having more. If you concentrate on what you don't have, you will never, ever have enough. This from Oprah Winfrey, first successful African-American woman in the media. Again, Vicki Yates, thank you so much for joining me today on Take 10 on Tuesdays with the Tennessee Tribune.
Thank you.
All right.